on via video conferencing, not video conferencing, but distance learning policy. But this is our fourth meeting on this for today, Tuesday, May 12th, and the time is approximately 6:30. First item on our agenda is the approval of minutes. We have minutes from April 16th as well as April 23rd. Has the committee been able to look over some of these minutes? And are we good? Do you have any questions or thoughts?
I had something to highlight for the minutes on April 23rd.
Sure. All right. So you know what we'll do? We'll actually approve these together, but if you have some comments, if you want to add, that's fine. So for April 16th, are we good for the minutes for April 16th?
Yes.
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 Okay. So we can, Godfrey, you good on the April 16th minutes?
Yes, I am.
Okay, good. Thank you. So we can move forward for April 16th. So Erica, did you want to discuss or highlight for April 23rd?
Sure. On April 23rd, on page 1, there is a sentence that said, Mrs. Moses further suggested that on page 1, the language was too broad and suggested that the policy be more specific about media. And I honestly can't remember what she said, but I don't think it was media.
Okay.
And then on page 2, there was a note that Brenda said. She said that they also had students with other service and teachers like music teachers. If I recall correctly, what Brenda was talking about was about specials having to block out a certain amount of time to be able to service the entire district, but it was just captured in that incomplete sentence.
Okay. So maybe we can have Laura take a look at that again. And I know it's not verbatim, but we want to get the essence of what we spoke about and kind of highlighted that. Okay.
Yep.
So maybe she could take a look at that. So, all right. So anything else that you want to add or comments or thoughts on those meeting minutes?
Nope.
Okay. Perfect. Do I have a motion to approve the April 16th and 23rd? Great. So moved. Thank you. And the big item on our agenda, the only item on our agenda is the distance learning policy. And I'm just going to quickly, Frank, just give a quick recap, which we pretty much have done during all of our meetings that we've had. But this is our fourth meeting, which I'm glad we're really able to delve in and really look at this with some additions and some changes. There have been some revisions and additions recommended by our attorney, Tom Mooney. We really wanted him to look at that, which he has. We're also looking at sustainability as we move through this policy. We've also gotten some great input from Yvette Gourevich as well as Dr. Myers to really craft this policy. And they've been with the policy committee throughout this whole process. As you can recall, we looked at New Canaan, we looked at Canton, we looked at Portland. We've gotten some great advice and some great thoughts on how we can, again, craft this policy. And again, we wanted to keep going. And if we need to add or change, we can do that. But we did want a comprehensive policy, which I believe we have at this point. Also, the goal of this policy is to ensure that we take into consideration access and equity during this closure. It's really important for policy members as well to make sure that we capture that as well. We also want to make sure that we're motivating and engaging our students throughout this process of distance learning, and we realize the challenges. But I feel that our teachers and our students and our staff and our parents have worked really, really hard on this. So Frank, unless I'm missing anything, if you want to add in, I know that we, again, have a very robust policy at this point. And I think we just need to look at it. I know that there's been some deletions, some additions, some thoughts put into this policy. And I think we're good on this, but I'd like for us to go through it again, hopefully the final version. And if we're good with this, then our next board meeting, which will be coming up on Tuesday, the board will be able to look at it as a first read, and then hopefully our subsequent meeting after that, the board can vote to move this policy forward. So Frank, I'm going to switch it over to you, and I think you're going to screen share
Great.
at this point.
Yes, thank you. Heidi, that's a great opening. The purpose and the goal really tonight is to be able to take one last look at this policy. Shipman and Goodwin, Tom Mooney, has made some changes to the policy that I want to take us through tonight. I'll go in and update this in real time. I'm going to be communicating with principals shortly after this meeting. I'd like to include
Yes.
this document with your agreed upon changes. So you might remember at our last meeting, Godfrey had asked a question about mandated reporting and whether we wanted to have some specific language in the policy related to that. So I approached Tom Mooney with that question in mind and asked that he do a general review of the policy since he had it in front of him anyway, and to give us any suggested edits that he thought would be worthwhile. So you'll see here on page 1, he's made some slight modifications here. This policy was adopted. So I'll go ahead and remove designed. In paragraph 2, again, I think this is just word usage, not surprisingly is believed. He's applies prolonged. And I believe he, or I might have just included a highlighted item here. So yeah, okay. So that's it for the first 2 paragraphs. Paragraph 3.
Frank, on the first
Yes.
paragraph, I think you took off the was. This policy was or
Oh.
is.
Good catch, thank you. I'll go in and do this here while I'm in. And prolonged. Great, okay. Paragraph 3, you can see the bold changes here. Adds an example, which is fine. A little further down, he's added or guidelines. We had added this piece because we're concerned about the real possibility of school going out again when we return to school next year, or starting the year at a reduced capacity in school buildings. I had written orders. Tom Mooney has added guidelines because they have been referred to as guidelines more recently. So that's his addition, which I'll formalize here. Then you see the strike through here in addition through, that gets removed. And you'll see some added language. Accordingly, the board has determined that virtual online courses or university or college courses are an alternative. We may choose to just eliminate this because we plan to develop a distance learning policy. My recommendation would be to just eliminate it, but I'll defer to the chair and listen to anyone else that wants to suggest whether to keep this language or just remove it entirely.
I would say remove it.
Remove.
Yeah.
I agree. Is everybody in agreement, committee members on that?
Yes.
I'm fine with that.
Okay, yeah, you can remove that, Frank, thank you.
Okay, so I'm gonna remove that sentence and the connecting sentence, which we had already struck right now. And that brings us to this last sentence, which is unchanged in the paragraph. The next paragraph remains the same. And then we get into page, I guess this is page 2. And Tom just caught a consistency error here. So referring to this policy as emergency closure remote learning policy from here on out and not distance learning policy. So which makes good sense to change. He's footnoted that change at the bottom. The heading is inconsistent. So what I'll do is just eliminate that footnote now that you know the change that we've made, and that footnote should disappear, and it has. Down below you can see that that footnote has disappeared. As At the top of page 2, the only other change here is this word substantially, which our attorney has added. And down here, the footnote is, it's been included to complete the replication of the statute. So I will go ahead and remove that footnote and then just change the italicize and bold.
Frank, I'm sorry, can you enlarge this just a little bit more? If you
Sure.
don't mind, if you can, thank you.
Okay. Let's see. Is that better?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. So next paragraph here, the vision and mission of the board will continue. You can see he has removed school district and inserted board. So I'll go ahead and make that change. That's a good change. In the event that remote learning is required during an emergency closure. The next sentence is fine. And then we have a strike here. Which I'll remove.
But didn't we have some conversation around that and making sure if we needed to bring in subs or contractors that they were certified?
I think we have that in the sentence above.
Oh, so it's just,
I think
okay.
it's,
Oh, so it's
it's a redundant.
got it.
Yes,
Okay.
certified teachers, yeah, that's
Okay.
in there. Thank
Frank,
you.
do we want to extend this to pre-K?
Teachers pre-K through 12,
Yes.
I think we can. I think
that's a good suggestion, yeah,
Yeah,
that's great,
that-
pre-K through
that
12,
expands our scope.
Yep. that's good.
Well,
And, yeah.
do we need to do adult ed too then?
Adult ed is actually taking place in Stanford.
Stanford, yes,
Okay, okay.
yeah, we
Um,
don't need, yeah, I think we're good on that.
But does that change, the classification of where it stands in our district? Just to make sure, are they seen within the district eyes? Well,
So by regulation, Norwalk Public Schools is required to offer an adult and continuing education
Okay.
program. We receive a grant each year to do that. And as part of that, we are in a consortium with Stanford Schools, and Stanford is the financial LEA. So we pool our money together. We have one director, and then we offer services throughout Norwalk and Stanford that anyone can participate in. We also have partners from Westport and Wilton and Darien, and maybe New Canaan. So it's a large consortium that we have. This particular policy seems to be focused on school age public school. And if you read each of the contents, most of this wouldn't apply in the adult setting.
thanks for clarifying that.
Okay.
And Brenda and Yvette, does either our policy or another policy need to cover our transition students, 18 to 21?
They're included within the broad parameter of our 12th graders. They
Okay,
continue to be referred to as 12th graders, even though they're in our 18 to 21. I think this is fine.
okay.
So if we continue, you'll see, however, during prolonged emergency closures. So that there is added language from Attorney Mooney. He's added a comma here, it looks like, which I will make regular font. May necessitate that has been struck. So we'll just remove that. Online learning may be the only method for sustaining safe student learning. And then a bit further down, he has made a modification to the sentence related to children with disabilities. So the first change he has made is striking accessible formats. And in place of this, he has said, such educational materials in accordance with their IEPs or Section 504 plans. Does everyone see that?
So the accessibility was duplicative in that sentence. We had it
Mhm.
twice. So that's fine.
And Yvette, have you not run into any instances yet where a child needs a device in distance learning that they did not need in a live environment and therefore was not in their IEP?
Say that again, Erica.
So I'm just thinking through a student who may not have needed an accommodation in traditional learning environment, but does need an accommodation in a virtual learning environment, it would not be in their IEP.
That's correct.
So, but this is specific to it being in their IEP.
So this is board policy that says what we must do. What you've just described is what we may do, and we are doing that. It's up to the board whether you want it to be a requirement or a best practice.
I think the key language here is in accordance with their IEPs
Mhm.
and 504 plans that we had left out, but
Right.
really need to be in.
Well, that's actually the language I'm challenging because a child IEP is not written for virtual learning.
So the attorney's position on this is that this is what the board should be looking to set as policy because we don't know what the crisis circumstance may be, and we can't make promises in policy based upon the unknown. And we don't know, because you don't know the unknown, you don't know whether you can deliver on promises that you hope to be able to accomplish via policy. What this does say though, is that the board is required to fulfill its obligation in accordance with IEPs and 504 plans that had been designed prior to the crises. And so this is a good board position to take a stand on, and it aligns with statute that the board is obligated to meet the needs of students with disabilities or with those with 504 plans based upon the plans at the time that they were developed and agreed upon.
If you were to take it one, so the federal requirements are that they're accessible formats and that those formats are available at the same time as when other children are getting their materials. Those are the 2 points.
Could we change it,
Erica
Yvette,
is
to
suggesting,
use language that's pulled off of IDA and say like a child, something along the lines that they have to be able to access their education?
well, that's what this is suggesting, that to ensure that they're accessing through accessible devices, materials, and applications. Erica, what I'm suggesting would make you more comfortable, and I think it's a discussion for the policy committee, is in accordance with their IEPs, section 504 plans, or continuous educational opportunity plans. Because that's what we're doing for kids with disabilities when we can't fully implement an IEP or a 504 plan in this environment. We're writing a continuous educational opportunity plan. That's a guideline from the state. It's not a requirement in IDEA or in state regulation. I offer it up, for committee's consideration.
Yvette, Erica, if I could just jump in, I think that's a very good suggestion. And I know Tom Mooney has spent a lot of time on this, looking at the language, making sure we're in a compliance, giving us suggested language that we can use. So perhaps if the committee's comfortable with that, adding that extra language, I think would be a fabulous idea if we could possibly do that. Erica, are you okay with adding that language in?
Yes, I would definitely like to add it in. And Yvette, if, when we present this to the larger board, if it's something that we can introduce, you know, as, you know, that it's following state guidelines, that specific language that you're referencing to ensure that we are covering, you know, that philosophy of children in general being able to access their education, regardless of whether or not it was in their IEP, because the IEP wasn't written for a virtual learning experience. That would be great.
So, Frank, the suggestion would be in accordance with their IEPs, comma, section 504 plans, or continuous educational opportunity plans.
Continuous opportunity.
Educational opportunity plans. And that's sort of that interim document that doesn't require a PPT, but requires consultation with the family to say, what do you need?
Okay. And then Frank, I think you're just missing the word or after plans.
Okay,
Well, we
thank,
have, yeah, I think it says with their IEPs, maybe comma.
yep.
Yeah,
Okay.
I think
see
we want to
that.
get that comma in there, right?
Yeah.
Section 504 plans or,
Right.
without the comma after or, right? Or continuous educational opportunity plans.
Get rid of this comma,
Yeah,
take this off. Okay,
That's
Okay.
what you wanted to say,
everyone
right?
good
Erica?
with this paragraph?
I
Yeah.
think that looks good. Okay. Thank you, Frank and Yvette and Erica.
Okay,
All right.
okay, so we'll scroll to the next paragraph. One small change here, and it's keeping it consistent. So eliminating virtual, you see the strike through.
Mhm.
And then adding instead online, which is the language that we've been working on.
Yes.
And then the next sentence is a strike through. And I think it's just redundant from the paragraph we just worked on. But I'll give you a chance to take a look at it. See if I can get them both on the
Mhm.
same.
I need accessible formats.
His footnote at the bottom here says the deleted words essentially repeat what appears in the previous paragraph. So if everyone's okay, I'll go ahead and eliminate that.
Yes.
Well,
Oh,
yeah.
go ahead.
Did we have accessible formats? That was in the paragraph above, right? I can't see the paragraph.
It's interesting you say that. He
Yeah.
struck that
Yeah.
out, but in fact, accessible format is the words from federal regulation.
Okay.
We do have it in the paragraph above.
That's fine.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so I'll go ahead and remove that. Students will have access. Okay, this looks the same. Same change here. And now we're headed into the grading policy. So one quick
Oh,
point.
so I'm sorry, Frank, this,
Oh.
where we have continued, jump up a little bit there. The virtual library will include access to, okay. So here you need the same changes here
Oh.
as documented in the child's IEP, our
It
504
looks,
plans.
for some reason, it looks like we got cut off. It looks like it's here.
Eric is suggesting put in continuous educational opportunity plans.
Okay, so this sentence really probably should be here then, right?
Yeah,
And you want to add the language that we added above?
Yes, yes.
same language.
Let's see.
It's the last sentence second line from the bottom of that paragraph right there.
Okay. Okay, good here. So
Yes.
we're moving to grading. The superintendent wanted me to notify you that in order for us to effectively, implement this grading policy protocol, we would need to begin to do it now. We wouldn't have the time for it to get approved tonight, go on as first read
Right.
to the full board, and then a second read and adoption. So I wanted to make sure that you all were in agreement and understanding that the district is in a situation where it has to implement this now. So provided you're okay with the way this looks, we would begin this process and complete this process. The passage, the adoption of this policy would not occur until the June business meeting. So it would be after the end of the school year. And maybe we should go through this portion before we commit to that, okay? So in this paragraph, he has removed R. His comment is to eliminate the use of personal pronouns for board policies. So he's gone ahead and done that in a number of areas here. The goal of this policy, looks like there's an extra space. He strikes respects. He's added takes into consideration, just more policy oriented language. The rest of this paragraph is good with the exception of virtually or. He's struck that. During an emergency closure are grading policies. So again, he's just removed the pronoun. Looks like he's added a comma too.
Okay.
This remained the same. Here, it's just eliminate the pronoun. Rest of that's fine. This language is struck. Capitalized research. Here he just replaced will with should. Calculating grades at the high school level. Eliminated OUR. With this, comma. He's added the word this. Policy includes a process for determining grade point average, and for he's added determining if a student has successfully earned the required course credit. Same change here. It's just better to go through these changes with you one at a time. Here, he's added during the COVID-19 pandemic.
Well, should it be specific to COVID-19 or any
You think-
emergency closure?
Yeah, he thought that we should keep it
Keep that, yeah.
to COVID-19.
Okay.
It could be a reference for us if there's some other
Right.
emergency. You know, we might have to adopt a more particular emergency policy, but this could be a good foundation for it.
Frank,
But
if I could just add in or any emergency closure can we add language like that? Just whether it's related to COVID-19 or any type of emergency? I know that yeah. Go
Yeah,
ahead,
I did discuss that with him.
Yeah.
His recommendation, and I think it's specific, but he thinks that the board is,
Okay,
it really behooves the board to make this specific to
Okay.
the COVID
Okay.
crisis.
well, I know that we're calling it the emergency closure remote learning policy. That's the name of our policy, so,
Right,
okay,
right.
I understand. Okay,
We are recommending, he has struck here, and he's just added here is recommended. I think this was bold to begin with, but this is new language.
okay,
Then you see the points here. He's added it here. We are recommending is
Mhm.
being removed. He's added this comma. He's added will. Again here. He's replaced Norwalk's response with board's response. And he's actually eliminated or any extended emergency closure here. COVID-19 pandemics added here. And again here. And then we can look here, he's footnoted the commissioner's grading guidance that was issued back in early April. And he's got a note here, the board will want to consider whether it wants to mirror the commissioner's grading guidance with respect to the use of pass and incomplete.
Let me just make a comment about that.
Sure,
So when the commissioner guidelines came out, it was kind of like 4 pages of 20 different things you could think about, right? They weren't recommendations in a package. There was a range of them. And one of the things that we did not recommend what's called pass incomplete, which means you pass the course. We actually code it as an incomplete. And the incomplete is this is what our goal is that we have students who need what we believe to be some identified focused tutoring to help them close out their classes. They're close, they're missing a few assignments, but in the course of trying to manage the entire distance learning, they may have got behind, they may need some extra support. So we're saying to our high school teachers, grades 9, 10, 11, and it's a little less of an issue for seniors but I don't know why a senior couldn't take advantage of this. It just means they wouldn't graduate until the August graduation, just so you know, because you have to complete all of your coursework by the last day of school in order to be in the usual graduation. So I'm not sure how that would fare it out. But when we said incomplete, I like the language he put in because incomplete can be for multiple reasons. And you know, this is just the nature of what happens during this kind of emergency. But what we wanted is not pass incomplete. We want to identify a student with an incomplete. We actually budgeted some money to pay teachers the tutoring rate to work with students from the time school closes until the end of June to help them move incompletes to passing as one more opportunity to give individualized support to students in content they had already been working on. Now, some students are going to fail a class and they're not close. They're not ready for an incomplete. And then we will either work with them in summer school or next year in our credit recovery program. But the incomplete, what we've identified, particularly for some social emotional areas and illnesses, is students who could use some additional tutoring support. And teachers can really focus on that tutoring when they're not also teaching their full course load. So the teacher writes says the student can get an incomplete. What are the assignments or tasks that the student needs to complete? And then the student gets individual tutoring to help complete those is the model that we've been looking at, which is a little different and the commissioner's pass/incomplete. The standard, the application for students is the same, but I just wanted to be clear, it's a little different than our intent. And we recommended that a student complete it because this is when they're close to the coursework. We didn't really want to have these drag on through the summer or into next year. This was really a focused intervention for students, a little different than what we do.
So Brenda, you're suggesting we should take out the pass and just list it as incomplete as we did before.
Yes.
Yeah, I agree. And
Others?
add 12th grade.
Okay.
I'd also like it to be 9th, 10th, 11th, and 12th graders. If there was a senior who was having difficulty, I wouldn't want them to miss out on the incomplete.
And then
Ninth,
Frank, on
And 12.
number 2, and Yvette, maybe you could chime in here. It should be IEPs and 504s, right?
I think so.
Okay,
Of that, I'm
it's-
going to add 504
plans, yep.
plans.
And then it should be L students.
Wait, Frank, I was mute. I wouldn't say students with IEPs and 504s. I would say students with disabilities.
Okay,
Okay. L students and students who may need counseling or mental health services that they cannot receive at home.
And Frank, could we just spell out the English learner students?
Yeah, that's a
Yeah.
good
Sure.
suggestion. I agree. English language students,
English
absolutely.
learner or English language learner.
English language
Actually-
learners?
It's
Right?
actually, it's now referred to as an L, English learner.
Okay,
Okay.
should we
For-
remove that comma, Frank? Or is it, oh, they all have commas. Oh, it's inconsistent. The one above it just needs a
Yeah,
comma.
number
Um,
2, he has a
two at the
comma on
end.
all of the other ones,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
I think it should be there.
wouldn't we have a
Or-
period though, since everything else has a period at the end?
It has-
Other than
but
that,
he-
yeah.
he
I think-
did 1 through 6 with commas, and then he puts a period at the end so that it creates coherence.
Okay,
Right.
okay.
Students who are sick themselves caring for a family. Just out of curiosity, could we list students who, since we have caring for a family member, could it be students who are caring, students who don't have supports at home from a family member? Like I'm thinking about the K through 3 kids who are not independent learners and they do not have the support of a parent at home.
Erica,
There-
this is just for high school students?
Okay.
This only applies to an incomplete is for a high school student.
Okay,
I
thank
think,
you.
I mean, we could still add it. There might be a high school student that falls into that category.
And for number 6, do we want to spell it, disengaged and disconnected students? Just to capture kind of the spirit of how students in our, just how we're capturing those disengaged students. Disengaged and
Godfrey, are you saying disengaged and disconnected as a proposed change?
yes.
Okay. Disengaged and disconnected?
Correct. And to live in a the semantics, I'm looking at disconnected as a kid who's been truant, and then in the time we experience this, they're still enrolled truant, and they would be disconnected. Disengaged, I think captures the kids who we have trouble maintaining contact with. That's less on a consistent basis.
I'm fine with that change.
Yep, I
Um,
think that adding that is fine as well.
Erica had mentioned trying to capture the student who lacks support,
Mhm.
parental support. You could make the argument that, underclassmen certainly would fall into that category. I'm just looking for the right place.
I mean, is there a way, whether calling it, learning environment that's not conducive to that?
Or maybe students that require more support or who have lost needed parental support during this time?
Well, parental is a tough word because it could be a guardian, right? So
Yeah.
maybe like
Or
lack of
additional, yeah, lack, right, or additional support. Just trying to
adult
think of what-
support. Yeah, just
Maybe we say it here, lack.
Added support, additional support, adult support.
Is it that, or is it lack needed?
Can I suggest that if you
Yeah.
take out dealing with the trauma of loss and just say dealing with the trauma as a result of pandemic, you cover what we're struggling to cover right now.
Great suggestion.
Yeah, I think that's a
You're
good,
saying, trauma.
Or dealing with the trauma, or
Mhm.
dealing with trauma, not
With trauma as
not
a
blood
result.
trauma, just trauma as a result of the pandemic, and that takes care of
Mhm.
a myriad
Yeah.
of circumstances.
sure.
That's a good one.
Thanks, Yvette.
This next one, when I had the phone conference with Tom Mooney, he suggested either we take this out, pass with distinction, or we strengthen the language. And instead of saying we are considering the concept of passing with distinction, we say we approve of the of passing with distinction, or the board, will-
Yeah, I thought I thought during our last meeting, we discussed having passed with distinction. I thought we were pretty much in favor of that, if I'm not
Yeah.
mistaken.
Unfortunately, when I put the language in, it was the language from the guideline. It's not definitive enough, but so I wanted to make two recommendations. One is to move that. So we have a section that says determining graduation credit pass fail. And I think the pass with distinction should go with that little family because it's kind of hanging out there by itself. So if we go up just a little bit where it just says determining graduation credit pass fail. Yeah,
would we add it here?
yeah, and if we could add it there.
And was there a reason we had it separate earlier? I'm just asking if there was a reason.
I don't think there was a reason.
And
for it
so
to
what
be there.
I wrote, students receiving a passing grade of A or higher will receive passing with distinction. And I just added it as the next bullet under that pass fail section, right after where it says COVID-19, I need another bullet.
So maybe we just add that language. What do you think? Students with a passing grade of A or higher are considered passing with distinction.
I'm good with that.
Does that
I
work?
think that works with a passing grade of A or higher. I think it also gives some clarity as far as the grade. So if it's A or higher, I think we're fairly consistent on that then.
No.
Okay.
Have passed with distinction.
Okay.
How does that look?
Perfect.
I think that looks good.
Okay,
Yep. Good.
We'll go-
Thank you.
here. Final grades in world language. This is just changing this to will. And then calculating grades at the elementary school level during the COVID-19 pandemic.
Yeah,
It's removed.
each
We
of
will
the
continue.
changes in this paragraph, fortunately, are just their language changes. They're not any content. So he didn't change the intent of our guideline at all.
Right. face-to-face to in school. Hour will be used. Principals.
Are you done?
No, I'm not done yet. Just 2 minutes. Sorry about that.
That's okay.
Brightens our day.
Right. As a result, such case will at all elementary schools. And then he has here, the meaning of this provision is not clear. Reference is made to principals in the plural, and reference is also made to a district-wide determination. The edits clarify that a single decision will affect all elementary schools. If that is not the intent, this provision should be revised. So he wrote this thinking that we would want this to be standard across the system. Brenda, was that your intent? If so, then this is the way it should be written.
Let me tell you what kind of has happened as I've met with each one of the principals and reviewed their progress reporting. What we do is we have a set of areas in the report card that are determined district-wide that they are to be completed. Obviously, literacy and mathematics and the arts and the things that we've been regularly teaching during distance learning. There are some areas that are a little bit softer areas about, effort, that the principals kind of gather that data based on, so a character ed school thinks about that a little bit differently maybe than another school. So what we tried to do is say in some areas that were not like what we considered mission critical, the principal could have some discretion. Now I know this muddies the waters, I apologize. But we did feel that there was some real reasons. You never want a person to be grading something that they haven't been actually evaluating. And the other thing is there's a couple of standards in the science area that they teach in different orders. So some of them teach it in the first trimester and some teach it in the third. So what they X out changes based on their sequence, which is fine. So we did offer we do have a district determination of the process and what will be marked with an X, but we did give some flexibility in some of those areas.
So we would then need to clarify that. Because the way he's made this revision, a single decision made by a principal would affect all the schools.
I think that if we did, like principals will review each category on the report card. I want to try to separate that there is a district-wide determination.
You mean preserve that?
Yeah, that and that includes so where he has that some areas that are not fully assessed, the principals will review each category on the report card and identify some areas that are not fully assessed. I guess I want to ask the board if they're comfortable with that concept first. I was hoping that it would be identical building by building, but for good reason, I'm a little concerned about that for each area.
I'm just highlighting your proposed change here.
Because I lost connection, Brenda. I just want to make sure I understood your question and the context where it's coming from. Could you just explain again why we're making this distinction and what clarification are you asking of the board?
So when we look through the standards-based report cards, there has been the opportunity for principals to X out certain areas that they weren't teaching, like maybe at third grade this time, and it's actually a code on the report card. So what we said is during COVID, there were areas that principals are not allowed to X out. Like every student will get a grade in literacy and in mathematics and in the arts and phys ed, right? Like, because that's what we've really tailored the elementary instruction around. But there are some other areas that have always been not necessarily sequenced the same way for each school. And so they had used the X, which makes perfect sense.
So Brenda, at this point, I've made this edit. Principals will review each category on the report card and identify some areas that were not fully assessed. Do you want to put a period here?
Yes, yeah.
And then turn this into a complete sentence?
And what's the difference in just, capturing an incomplete in this area versus really being specific around the language that you're capturing here?
Well, it's the way the elementary report card is written. So it actually has, like, in science, it names like some content areas like environmental science. And then you have 3 trimesters. And you wouldn't put a grade in it if you hadn't taught it, but you don't teach it every trimester.
Okay.
It's not really, you can't give a child a standards-based progress on something that wasn't taught. So I want to be fair that we're not artificially putting things in, but there, and it's the way the report card is written. It's not necessarily curriculum-based, it's progress-based. So it has always, when it was designed several years ago, this kind of flexibility was built into the reporting system, the progress report.
And making a determination means that there's no intent to continue to try and provide instruction around the area they haven't made progress in, or around the area that they haven't been taught. Is that what
Yes.
So and putting it incomplete, does that mean it's just going to happen at a later time?
No, it's actually an X, and what that means is was not measured this trimester. So a parent doesn't think that it's a bad grade. It's like it's kind of like an NA, not applicable.
Okay. Thank you for clarifying that. I didn't mean to hold up the.
No, but it's an interesting point, and until I reviewed the progress report with each administrator, you don't really get some of the tension that gets created, So I think that the district will determine areas of the progress report that are required to be evaluated is the sentence. And then the second sentence is principals will review each category on the report card, will review each additional category. So it's kind of like we make a determination about the core, and then the principals review those other categories.
Okay, can you give me that sentence one more time? The district will?
Yeah, the district will determine the categories. I'll get rid of which. The categories that will be assessed for all students.
Period.
Principals
will review.
Yeah.
Okay.
Principals will review
Each
additional categories on the report card and identify. So like we have the core, and then there's some other categories that but it's like, it's not each category, it's principals will review additional categories on the report card and identify some areas that were not fully assessed.
Okay. I
So
think
Frank,
you got it.
well, Frank, you got to change before category. It would be replacing each with additional.
Principals will review.
additional categories.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
And just based on Tom's other changes, I feel like he's gonna take out the word some. And put and identify areas, because he
Yeah,
just seems to
yeah.
have, yeah.
Good point.
Yeah.
Yeah, not needed.
If we could just go up for a minute, I want to make sure that the board is aware of
Mhm.
this. So Tom has here as a footnote, the board will want to consider whether 3 weeks is sufficient. And that is,
That's for the high school incomplete.
yeah, I just saw it.
And the reason for that too is if we don't tutor and support kids with an incomplete over 3 weeks, they're gonna miss any credit recovery in the summer. And
Here it
so
is.
we want to make sure that those students can
Mhm.
have an opportunity for credit recovery if in fact they could not complete their course.
Okay.
So I'll remove that footnote if we're comfortable with 3 weeks. Okay.
Yes.
Hey, and Frank, just going back up there, I think the word all in that last sentence has to come out
Um,
right there. Oop, right, jump past it.
And just to make sure I understand that right, we're saying,
down. I'm just looking for,
Keep going down, keep going. Last sentence on this page. So those areas will be marked at all elementary schools with an X. I think Brenda was writing in flexibility, so it wouldn't be at all elementary schools. Right, Brenda?
Yeah, those areas we marked
At elementary, well,
with an
marked.
X. You probably don't need at elementary, with an X.
Okay.
okay.
okay. Godfrey, did you have a comment that you wanted to say?
it was more a clarifying question.
Okay.
So regarding the 3 weeks, we're saying that within 3 weeks, this 3 weeks is the timeline for how long an incomplete is an incomplete.
Right.
I just wanted to make sure I understood what,
So what we're finding with kids this year is that, again, typically what happens is by the last day of school, you either pass or fail your class. If you fail the class, there's some sort of retake structure. Do you need to take it again? Do you need it during summer school? Will you take it credit recovery the next year, right? There's kind of this piece. And that's traditionally how we've done it. Because of COVID and because of the issues raised with distance learning, we find that there is a place for an incomplete that we've never used before this way, where we would provide the individual tutoring because students need some more direct instruction and support to complete some key assignments. It's not like they don't have enough to pass the course yet, but we know if they could get through those key assignments with help, we really feel that they can pass the course without having to go to summer school.
Mhm. And the 3 week window that we're referencing that this take place within 3 weeks?
Yeah, so basically school ends on the 9th and grades would be posted by the 26th, because if we don't post by then, we can't get them into summer school July 6th.
Okay,
That's where the 3 weeks kind of
Yep.
comes from.
okay.
It's also a factor of budget. The money needs to be expended by June 30.
So as we
Thanks,
look
Brenda.
here, thank you. Respecting privacy during remote learning.
Mhm.
Tom made it a point to say that we needed to balance this carefully so as not to frighten parents into letting the instruction into their homes. If we're if we come across overbearing on this, he thought that we might actually lose parent engagement who might be concerned about their home being recorded through the live stream. So he gave us a couple of options here. You can see here that he's eliminated this sentence and then he's included, parents are encouraged to have their students participate in a location that is quiet and free of distraction. to protect student confidentiality, other individuals in the home are not permitted to participate in or be visible on the video conference or otherwise observe the lesson other than reasonable adult supervision of the student. Parents, guardians, and students are prohibited from recording video conferencing sessions. Here, this topic sentence is respecting the privacy of our students is a top priority during remote learning. But down here, he said that we're concerned that addressing mandated reporting obligations of school employees in this policy would have a chilling effect on parental engagement in remote learning. Notwithstanding the foregoing, should the policy committee decide to include such language, we recommend that it revise this paragraph as follows. So I'll let you read that. And then we need to this decision point here. Either we leave the mandated reporting language out, the DCF language, which he's offered here as an alternative, because of the concerns that Tom has raised, which is that it may have a chilling effect on parental engagement, or we stay the course on including the mandated language and include it as he has worded it here in the footnote. Tom thought that we would be able to accomplish the spirit of Godfrey's point by sending out a communication to certified staff indicating this paragraph in the footnote, which is that we are mandated reporters, and that we could do that procedurally outside of the formal policy so as not to inhibit parental engagement. Does that make sense?
So it'll live in here just as a footnote.
No, it would be removed. This would be removed entirely. And we would communicate with the staff during this closure with language related to their obligation as mandated reporters if they have reasonable suspicion of abuse or neglect of a child. What Tom is saying is we can do two things. We can not include the specific mandated language and write the paragraph in this way, or we can include this language with the understanding that our counsel is suggesting that this could inhibit parental engagement in the remote learning process.
I would opt to include it. I think if they're not engaged, they're probably, I would say include it.
I would say include as well, just for the sake of the transparency, and living in the intent that this is happening during a crisis and an emergency, and a time to assure student safety, if not, it isn't increased priority at a time like this. I don't know what else would make logical sense to me as an educator, and I think any concerns around it, would be mitigated through training or just more cultural context. But I think some of us driving this conversation to me are those individual factors that would make it more comfortable to live and proceed. That stays.
See, you're breaking up, Godfrey.
Sorry, my vote. If you heard me.
Diana, what are your thoughts?
I am total opposite. I think that we should take it out only because the wording, it would scare families. One, the ones that do have homes that aren't, that are problem homes, but especially those that are either not legal here, immigrants, where if they see that wording of DCF on there, they might
Mhm.
just say, no way, we don't want to even be on this. And even if it's for their child.
Yeah, this is a real difficult one.
It is.
And if we're
And-
gonna give it to the teachers separately, that's more important because they're the ones that would report something. I don't see why we should scare some of those families that would take it wrong. Like, we understand it, but I don't think they would.
Well-
And I think, Frank, I'm sure that, teachers are speaking to students to have a quiet, space to work. So I'm sure that that's relayed continuously, which is important. And sometimes that doesn't happen depending on the situation. But I think it's, we always want students to be able to have a quiet environment, but sometimes that doesn't happen, right? Somebody might walk by
Yeah,
accidentally. I mean,
right.
I think that just like Frank, a little while ago, I think your son, somebody, things just happen, right? Like unexpectedly they do. And I think we just have to be careful on the verbiage and the wording, whether we take it out or we keep it in.
Well,
Everybody's bringing up good points. I mean, valid points.
yeah, Tom's associate, Natalia Sierra,
Yeah.
worked on this policy with Tom, and she was a
Right.
former director at DCF.
Okay.
And so she had
Mhm.
quite a bit of involvement in this decision point. This was really the impetus for us going to Shipman, was how
Right.
to implement this language. And, after they did a thorough review of the policy, they thought that, to Diana's point, that this could really have a chilling effect on parents. And their recommendation was to not include it, but address it with the faculty through either the office or the talent office.
Yeah, my feeling and my thoughts are to remove it as well and having that discussion. So I'm thinking how the committee can kind of come together on this as far as this piece is concerned.
Yeah, I'll yield to the experts, and I appreciate
Yeah.
both your and Diana's opinion on it. And our council. So
Right. Okay. Thank you.
if that's included, so if that's being struck, what is any of the above staying in, Frank?
Yes, so
Okay.
this gets struck. And, oops. And then this becomes the language that we go with.
So this language I thought was, there was two things in here. Let me just get back to where I was here. Are not participated to participate in or be visible in the video. I just don't think that's realistic. To Heidi's point, it happens. Also, we've got parents who are not, and families who are not living in a square footage that allows them to keep a child separated in every room. Could we just soften that language a bit?
Yeah, to protect student confidentiality, other students in the home.
You could
Can you
say
say
should
make
not,
reasonable efforts or something?
or
should
should not.
refrain from.
Yeah.
Because things happen, right? It does. And it's at a split moment that it does. And I think it does happen, unfortunately. But I think all of our students are trying so hard, especially our youngest students, and having that support. They might have a parent there that needs to help them.
And Frank, where it says adults in that last paragraph, if we jump back up, there are some instances where I know that older siblings are supporting younger siblings, so reasonable adult supervision. Could we be more flexible on that language?
Other than reasonable adult /
Or just reasonable supervision. Well, I'm trying
supervision.
to, just reasonable
Okay.
supervision could be an older sibling helping out.
Yeah, I like that better than
Right.
including sibling.
Yeah.
Tom's concern here in the next paragraph, and I've talked to Brenda about this because this has already gone out to families, is that parents are not under any FERPA requirements. You can see here in Tom's footnote, parents are not bound by FERPA, and we are reluctant to tie FERPA compliance to parent actions. So his suggestion was to strike this because parents are not bound by FERPA requirements. So this would come out. He's added this. And then he's removed this. Now here in this bullet, we may want to add the word sibling.
Or caretakers, it
Mhm.
may not be,
Parents, guardians.
it just may be parents, guardians, or caretakers.
Mhm.
And I think in that bullet, you need the word as appropriate because we have some young
Mhm.
kids or kids with
For sure.
disabilities that need
Mhm.
hands-on supervision.
And especially our youngest learners are K through 2, that will be starting up that might need that additional support at times.
Would it go here?
No, we'll go after from the
Mhm.
lesson as appropriate.
Okay.
And
And
Frank, I think Laura had a comment about a typo that she caught in the chat.
Oh, I don't have.
I didn't see it. It went pretty quick. Was it? Yeah.
She said, I think you want to say refrain from participating in or being visible. And she all capped being as if that word was missing.
Okay. Can you point me to that area?
Okay, so it's where it says in the middle of your screen to protect student confidentiality. Other
Mhm.
individuals in the home should refrain from participating in or being instead of be.
Nice catch, Laura.
Sorry, I don't participate normally.
You're now a committee member, right?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Another set of eyes is important.
Okay. We've got that one squared away. May result in the suspension. He did not like that word suspension.
Mhm.
He felt that we were out of compliance in saying that we could suspend students out for releasing or disclosing confidential information about other students or families. He thought we could modify remote learning privileges, but we could not suspend them from remote learning privileges. Hence the change there. And that's it.
So are we going to share this out with students? Because
Quiet.
I would like to think this wouldn't happen, but it could absolutely happen that a child takes a picture of it, what's being recorded, and puts it on Snapchat. They should know this anyway, but just to reinforce this policy at the student level.
We can, the best way to do that would be through the principal and in their communication to families and students.
So I'll just add a piece to that. So what the principals would receive if the committee this evening were to pass this to the full board, we actually have a document that are the guidelines that they've been waiting for. It's a little bit, it has a few other details in it about, end of year assessments and some other things, but they would get that tomorrow at the principals meeting. And then they are in the process of calculating the bracing grades. And then they would be providing guidance, and every principal is going to be providing guidance to families and students about grade bracing and standard bracing. But
Brenda, I'm sorry, is that going to be via, communication through memo, through Zoom? I mean, how will that be handled and disseminated from the principals through to the staff?
Yeah, so the staff, the principals work with the staff during their faculty meetings,
Yes.
and,
Mhm.
and they have been engaging in these conversations regularly during Zoom with, they just haven't been able to put it in writing to
Okay.
communicate to parents and students. Because we've been working on our grading practices the whole time, right?
Mhm.
Continuing to improve them, making sure students had time for revision and feedback in their assessments. So those pieces have been built in.
Okay.
But the final decision of the board for grade
Right.
basing, we had not publicized that until the board makes a decision.
Okay. Thank you.
Frank, I don't know if I'm on or not. Can I just see the policy piece? We had a first tooth loss in my house, so I was a little distracted. I'm sorry.
The first 2 pages?
No, the first tooth. We had a loose tooth come out in the last 2 minutes. I just want to
Oh.
see. I just want to see the language on the privacy piece, like the last 2
Oh,
paragraphs.
sure.
I'm
Okay.
sorry.
And after answering Yvette's question, I just want to, had a question around middle school grading.
So Yvette, I don't know if you heard our conversation, but council's recommendation was to not include, you got that?
That's fine. I just want to see the language where if a parent or a caregiver or a student misuses the video, what the teacher's authority is to change the, so I know there was language in there. Did we
Mhm.
take it out?
No, scroll down, Frank. It's the next section.
I thought so.
Yeah. Keep going. It's right. It's this last paragraph here about the modification to online remote learning privileges.
Okay,
Yeah, right here.
that's fine.
Okay.
We were trying to balance
Mhm.
Student privacy
Right.
with staff's comfort level in a new
Mhm.
medium. So I think that's the good balance. Thank
The
you.
Do you
only
agree?
change in that sentence, that the only change was we swapped out suspension with modification.
Good.
Yvette, are you comfortable with that? Do you think we need to add or change anything else on that?
No, I think that's,
Oh,
I
you're
think that's
muted.
fine. I
Okay.
think that's fine.
Thank-
Thank you.
Thank you. Godfrey, I know you wanted to add something about middle school.
Correct, just how they're being graded and if it's a pass fail as well. I wasn't clear with that extended.
Brenda, are you on?
Yep. Sorry, I'm
Specific,
unmuted. There we go.
Middle school grading?
Yeah, we have a section in the middle school grading in the policy. Right,
Middle school.
yes. So
Here
I
it
can-
is. Yep.
Level grade bracing it's identical. The
Yeah.
difference for them is their first. So basically what we do is we calculate what's called the S1, which is first semester. At the high school, that's 20 weeks plus a midterm. At the middle school, that's 20 weeks. They don't have a midterm that averages in. The S1 is calculated. And then based on that, we then calculate what's called Y1, which is the year-long average of all 4 10 weeks. And the student would receive the higher of that.
We see that.
So it's the grade bracing is the same as described above, which is identical to the high school. Just so you know, the only difference is the high school had a midterm that was 10% of their grade.
Okay, so they are receiving a pass fail.
No, they're only receiving grade bracing. And the reason is, so a middle school student in 7th grade does not earn credit towards graduation. and does not receive a transcript. So the pass fail is for the transcript, and that is for the awarding of credit towards the 25 graduation credits.
I see.
Okay. That doesn't apply to middle school or elementary. There's one exception, just so you know, and that one exception is middle school students who are in 8th grade who can earn up to 2 high school credits, one in world language, one in math. If that student, and it says, based on the guideline, if that student gets the passing grade in the world language, they would be awarded 1 world language credit on their transcript, and that would be a pass-fail. That class never calculated into GPA anyway. What you bring with you from 8th grade doesn't calculate in. It just counts as a credit value.
Okay, that makes sense. I'm glad that's the exception.
Yeah, we're trying to make sure that kids don't lose any of the opportunities we've been giving them. And remember, when you see that transcript printout, it'll say, graduation credits earned during the 1920 year in response to the COVID-19 pandemic were graded based on, pass with distinction, pass, fail, per board policy. So anyone getting our transcript to a college would know that that was a district decision and not a student decision. I think that's important because some places are allowing some student decisions about what goes on their transcript.
Thank you, Brenda.
Heidi, you're on mute, but unless there are
Thank
any
you.
other
I
policy
apologize.
questions,
Yeah, thank you I was just going to thank Brenda for the clarity for Godfrey's question. I appreciate that.
are there any other questions on the policy?
I think it looks, I'm going to go around to the committee members, but I know that we've spent a really good amount of time on this, and I think it was needed. And I think the bigger piece on this is to have Shipman and Goodwood look at this and having Tom's lens, looking through his lens and looking through the policy very thoroughly. And I think we've addressed a lot of the concerns that we had moving forward. So I do believe it's a very comprehensive, much more comprehensive than when we originally initiated this conversation. I think the policy looks good. I'll go around to policy members now if you have any questions or final thoughts on this. I'll start with Godfrey. Do you want to add anything?
No, I'll come back to it. No, not right now.
Okay, thank you, Godfrey. Diana, do you want to add anything, or Erica?
I'm all set.
No,
Okay. It really, I think it looks strong. It looks good. And I think, Brenda, back to your point, making sure a lot of this information is disseminated out eventually to all of our building principals and letting their staff know as well is really important. I know that you emphasize that that'll be done at some point.
So just a point that Frank had made earlier, which I just think is really important. So, we value the board making the policy decision. Once we kind of move forward from this meeting, because of our timeline, right? Because we're 4 weeks posting grades, that, we will move forward from here, sharing this guideline.
Great.
We will actually be implementing it in the grade book as the point of calculation.
Perfect. Thank you. I also would like to invite again, Brenda and Yvette to our board meeting on Tuesday, so you can share this information. Frank, we'll need to have between you, Brenda, and Yvette share this policy because it will be a first read. And I'm sure there'll be lots of questions and comments regarding this. And I think if we can have the whole team continue to be part of this would be great.
Absolutely.
Okay. Good. Is there any other comments from Yvette or Frank or from Brenda?
No, thank you for allowing the input.
Yeah,
Great.
and thank you to the committee for your hard work and several hours to get this policy in the form that it's in tonight.
Great.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I couldn't see. Is there somebody else that wanted to add something?
I just said thank you.
Oh, good. Okay. I can't see everyone's face. I just see the K policy and now I see Erica. I'm a visual learner, so it's important for me to see faces and I can't see everyone's. But I appreciate the policy committee really delving in and working on this. And I know it's been a lot of hours and days. And I want to thank everyone, Frank, Brenda, and Yvette, and Erica, and everyone being part of this policy. And I think it's sustainable, it'll have a lasting input. And I think we've worked really hard on this. And I think if we need to add changes to it, we will as we go along. But I think we need something with this kind of depth as far as a policy. So I want to thank everyone.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Thank
And
you.
do I?
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank
And before you go, if I can have a motion to adjourn would be fantastic.
Motion to adjourn.
Motion,
Motion.
perfect. So moved. Thank you. The meeting
Okay.
is adjourned. And thank you everyone again for working on this policy so diligently.
Good night.
Thank
Good
night,
you.
guys.
Have
Good
a wonderful
night.
night.
care.
Thank you.
Good night.